Hi, Lovebugs. Welcome to another episode of Girls Night. Today we have another guest, and today's guest is Zoey Charif, author of Love Can, in Fact, Be Calculated. Zoey blends her background in criminology, data analytics, and human behavior research to tackle one of life's biggest questions. Can love truly be understood and even predicted? In her groundbreaking book, she introduces the love formula, a framework designed to help people better understand compatibility, strengthen relationships, and approach love with both clarity and confidence. Her work bridges the worlds of science and emotion, showing us that while love is deeply personal, it doesn't have to be left entirely to chance. Through her research, writing, and speaking, Zoey empowers individuals to make more intentional choices in love and in life. And she is about to share with us exactly how to do just that. So, Zoey, welcome to the podcast. Hi, everyone. Life can get a little crazy, so let's talk about it. If you're ready to dive deeper, talk about what really matters, and feel a little more empowered, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Dockstader. I'm a life coach, baker, dog mom of two, and you're always there for you gal pal. And I'm so excited to have you join me. So grab your fuzzy socks, put on your comfy pants, and let's have girls' night.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we are happy to have you. And Zoey is amazing, everybody who is listening. And so, I guess just to start off, what really inspired you to pursue the concept of this book? So, to pursue a data-driven and mathematical approach to love in the way that you have.
Yeah. So back in my early 20s, I was cheated on. And at that time, I was studying criminology. So I had this laser focus desire to understand human behavior. And I kind of pivoted from criminality to love, right? So essentially, I needed to understand why we love, and why we experience heartbreak. So after I was cheated on, I needed to understand that. So I started looking online and browsing different types of information, articles, whatever it may be. And I came across this one article that said you can't fall in love with someone unless they're a match. So essentially, I started to ask myself, can I even measure a match? And eventually I did. I determined that you can measure a match based on how you score yourself and how you score your partner. And the premise was that you cannot fall in love with someone unless they're a mathematical match, or let's say a numerical match, or above you, because at that point, you subconsciously assume that they're better than you, right? You admire them. Let's put it that way. You
Yeah.
admire them. The idea came to me about 20 years ago, and I built on that in the last 20 years. I essentially kept it in my back pocket every time I dated someone, every time I heard friends and their stories, right? And about 6 years ago, I took data analytics in school and I applied the theory. And through 80 surveys, so at that time it was only 80 surveys, I confirmed that you can, in fact, measure and calculate love. So 6 years ago is when I really dove deep into the book. I started writing and writing and writing, and finally I published it back in November with a total of 300 surveys.
That's so awesome. And I feel like the way that you approached it is something that a lot of us are so curious about because a lot of us struggle with that, choosing people that aren't really a good fit for us long term. So we invest our hearts and we invest ourselves into it early, I feel like. So is this something that can help prevent people from kind of going down the wrong path?
100%. So there's another section in the book where I identified personality types, and some of the personality types fall in the extreme category. I'll give you an example. So if you're an extreme emotional, so the dichotomy is the emotional versus the practical. So imagine a scale, like an introvert versus extrovert, right? So that's what I mean by dichotomy.
Mhm.
So if you are an emotional versus a practical, you tend to look for more traits that attract you rather than values, which are measurement, which is a measurement of compatibility. right? So those are the two factors that we're weighing out. Those are the two factors that we're calculating. Now, an extreme emotional will completely bypass the values and the compatibility and only seek for attractive traits, right? That's bound to spiral in something destructive, actually, because if there's no lifestyle compatibility and if that partner is not hitting your top five values, you're likely going to end up very unfulfilled, and feel like your standards are not met, right? So if you take this survey and the questionnaire and you fall under any of the extreme personality types, there are eight in total, then the goal is actually first to make sure that you gain some sort of understanding and self-awareness about your tendencies, and then work towards being more healthy in that department. Once you're more healthy, then you'll know that whoever you do choose as a partner you'll be choosing in a way that's with self-respect, self-love, and self-awareness.
And that's actually a journey that I've gone on myself. I feel like I did used to be on the extreme emotional side
Yeah.
myself, hearing you talk about it, especially just because I would look for those like those traits that I was attracted to more so. And that's like you're saying, that does not mean compatibility in your core values and what you're looking for long term. And I think this kind of pops up with people where it's kind of like that situationship dynamic where it's like one person wants a relationship, a long-term commitment, and then somebody else wants something very casual, but there's still
Mhm.
an attraction there, right? Obviously, because otherwise all the other stuff wouldn't be happening. But I feel like that's what a lot of people get caught up in. And for my personal journey, it's been a lot about moving more towards the center of that and
Mhm.
allowing more of those practical attributes to come into play when I'm actually looking for a partner.
Exactly. You completely nailed it. For people who are in on and off relationships or situationships where the attraction, the chemistry is so out of this world, but for whatever reason, the partner doesn't want to lock it down, what's likely happening is a mismatch of values, right? Maybe for you, they're hitting your top values, maybe,
Mhm.
but I would challenge you to ask yourself if they're not willing to be your rock, if they're not willing to be consistent and predictable, are they truly matching your values? Or are you being an extreme emotional and you're telling yourself, it's okay, they're just an avoidant? Which, by the way, this whole anxious avoidant thing is one of the myths that I'm really trying to kind of um, shed some light on with this framework. I
Okay.
think it's very easy to say, hey, we're falling in an anxious avoidant dynamic. They really, really like me, but because their feelings are so strong, they're afraid to lock it down. No, sometimes they're just not that interested. And
Right.
there's so much information online where the avoidant will match the behaviors of someone who's simply not interested, who simply does not want to be a rock. From my experience, when a man wants to be a rock, when a man likes you and wants you, he's not going to let you go. Okay,
Right.
that's my experience. I'm not saying that avoidant personality types don't exist. What I'm saying is that not everyone will fall under an anxious avoidant category. In fact, I would challenge the majority of the people here who are listening. I would ask you, hey, are you an avoidant yourself? You probably are towards people that you think you can do better. And I would challenge you to ask yourself if you're secure, if the person that you're matched with gives you a reason to feel secure. You're probably a secure personality type or attachment style rather. You're just matching with someone who in their mind the values are not matching and therefore they're inconsistent and therefore it's triggering anxiety within you and you're now in an anxious attachment style. Okay, you're probably not that. And they're probably not an avoidant. The probable thing here is that there's a mismatch of scores
Mm.
and they're looking for something else.
Honestly, claps for you for saying that. I have been thinking about this so much lately because I feel like we are so quick to try to put labels on things to make ourselves feel better about the situation that we're in. And just like you're saying, like something else that comes to mind is when somebody calls their ex like a narcissist. Like That's like actually a very like extreme to have narcissistic personality disorder. That's actually a very extreme like personality disorder. They're probably not a narcissist. Like they're probably, like you said, just not that into you, or maybe you just had miscommunications or you had different values. And the same thing with the anxious and avoidant. And to your point, how you're saying like a man who is truly interested in you will not let you go. There is a very stark difference between, from my experience, there is a very stark difference between a man who likes you, who cares about you, but not enough, and a man
Mhm.
who is like, wow, I really love this woman. Like I do not want anybody else to have her the way that I have her. Like there is
Mhm.
such a distinct difference between the actions between those two men. And this is so often that situation where a man will not commit to one woman, but then the next woman he runs into right after that woman, he will commit to that woman. And I think to your point, it's just saying like, hey, they matched a little bit better.
That's exactly it. Like you nailed all my thought patterns here. So first of all, narcissism. I totally agree with you. We're just throwing that word around like, oh yeah, they're a narcissist. No, maybe they just didn't want to invest their energy into something that wasn't worth it for them. And honestly, like obviously some people's empathy will kind of shut down, right? Because empathy is energy. And to give energy so much to someone that you're not truly emotionally invested in, that's a lot to ask for. So those behaviors may look detached. They may look like they're selfish, but they're not narcissists, man. We need to stop doing that, right? So totally agree with you on that. And also the romanticizing, like it's so easy to find online reasons why someone will reject you and romanticize it. Like, oh, we're soulmates. Oh, runner chaser. Oh, they just need to find themselves. Girl, just move on. If he comes back, excellent. And if
Yeah,
he doesn't, he's not willing to be your rock, and you absolutely need that for a fulfilling relationship.
absolutely.
Don't settle. Don't settle. And by the way, if it's okay, I want to go into the analytics just a tiny bit because
Yeah, thank
I
you.
want to explain to people why it's so important to have self-confidence, okay? The analytics show that the people who are currently together, they're not just a numerical match, they actually view their partner as 4% above them. Okay,
Wow.
that means admiration. The people who are currently together are admiring their partner beyond just a match. What that means is that the man who wants to be with you thinks that you are 4% above them. If you are constant and constantly self-sacrificing, overgiving, overforgiving, you're pinging their subconscious into thinking that they're actually in fact better and that you need them, right? Be very careful with that because whatever signal you're sending, whether it's energetic or subconscious, the goal is for them to feel like they're lucky to have you. And the way to do that is by having self-confidence. It's by feeling proud with where you're at in your life, to constantly grow, constantly love, not love, but like be kind to the world, right? Do things that nurture your soul, and you'll have an inner glow. And every time you talk to this person, that inner glow will show, and that will ping their subconscious and say, she's got her shit together. She's vibrant. She's amazing. She knows who she is. She's authentic. And that's how you get them to think that you're quote unquote above them, right? Again, where they admire you is what I'm trying to say, right?
Right.
Um, and that's how you completely like extinguish the avoidant anxious dynamic and you both become secure. That's how you do it. You feel proud of yourself and you're confident, and then they'll feel that.
So 4% is very specific. Can you expand on how you got to that number specifically a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that analytics, right? So there were five groups that we analyzed. She broke up with me was the first group. So the second group was I broke up with them.
Okay.
Third, on and off relationship, mutual breakup, and finally, currently together. These four categories, where everyone was broken up for one reason or another, they all had a partner score that was lower than theirs. There's only one group that had a partner score above theirs, and that was the currently together. Now, I say 4%, that seems to be the magic number, but truly it like ranges, right? Because there were 300 surveys. So it was
Right.
4% on average. But it makes sense. Essentially, you're admiring the person. The group after the 4%, so the one right after, was a partner score of -5%.
Okay.
-5. So that means that the survey taker was above them by 5%. But you know what? They were in an on and off relationship. What that means is that they were fulfilled sometimes, they were unfulfilled other times. It never stayed. It seems like it was always something in them that felt like maybe I could do better, or maybe they were unfulfilled, so they got lazy in the relationship.
Hmm.
And maybe that caused some sort of, like rift where then it became off, right? Then maybe they missed each other, maybe they didn't find someone else that was better out there for them. Then they were back on, right? On
Hmm.
and off, on and off. All to say, even that -5% was still not good enough.
Right.
And by the way, this doesn't include, I mean, it's interesting. I didn't ask in the surveys whether this includes people who have kids or a mortgage,
Okay.
because I know a lot of couples who are in that situation where it's not that easy to just break away. They may be
Right.
unfulfilled, but of course they're staying for the kids, which I agree with, right? At least for a while. Like I hear that. I hear that. I would never encourage, a
Right.
breakup if kids are involved. But yeah, all to say that's what the analytics show.
Hi, Love Bug. I've got a juicy little gift for you. And if you've been feeling off, stuck in your head, or like your vibe just is not vibing lately, then this is for you. I created a free guide called The Three Secrets to Creating a Magnetic Energy Shift right now. And it's exactly what you need to start shifting your energy instantly. These are the exact tools I use with my private coaching clients when they're ready to stop chasing and start attracting. We're talking powerful, we're talking practical, and yes, of course, we are talking a little bit woo, but in the best possible way. In the guide, you will learn how to clear energetic blocks, activate your most irresistible frequency, shift into receiving mode, and there's even a bonus secret on how to use your body language to instantly boost your confidence and presence. So, if you're ready to feel like the version of you who turns heads, magnetizes opportunities, and walks through the world like the main character, then this is your sign. Head to the show notes and click the link to download your free copy. It is quick, it is powerful, and it is going to leave you feeling like, damn, I really am that girl. All right, let's get back into the episode. I'm so curious about that. So it seems like 4% is the magic number. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like if it's too far above that, if you think that they're too far above you, then that's going to lead to problems as well, right? Because then you're constantly trying to prove yourself and to think you're not good enough. And I think that kind of relates to what you were saying earlier, how it signals to if you're trying to overperform in a relationship, if that's the case. Is that correct in me
Yeah,
saying that?
100%. So there's a distortion that I identified, which is the infatuation distortion. If you think your partner has like 10%, 15% above you or more, you are infatuated, and that's not healthy. You're not here to worship your partner. You're here to have each equal admiration, right? So here's what's going to happen though. Let's assume you are infatuated with your partner and you give and give and give, right? You're pinging their subconscious and telling them, hey, you're better than me, right? Let me give more to you. That is inherently a turnoff,
Hmm.
inherently. Because as humans, we want to mate with someone who's a match or better than us because
Hmm.
there's this primal instinct where we need to have a strong offspring and we need to survive and blah, 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 right? All primal, but it's still very much functioning. What that means is if you keep on telling them, "Hey, you're better than me," and then they start to believe they're better than you, it's a natural turnoff, right?
Hmm.
So with the infatuation, let's assume you're infatuated with someone and you're worshiping them, and now they feel like they're on a pedestal. Clearly, they're going to think they can do better.
Right.
Right? So what's going to happen is they're going to get lazy in the relationship. They're not going to be your rock. Their communication style is going to suck, right? And all those things that you need to feel secure, and rightfully so, will not be present. So what's going to happen is you're going to have this push and pull. I like this person so much, but oh God, they suck so much, right? So then a breakup will happen. they will break up with you. And we found that the analytics showed that the people that were broken up with had a minus 15% for the partner score, which is interesting. You would think that it's higher.
Yeah.
But the interpretation here is that the partner sucked so much that they weren't able to match their values and their standards. Again, I understand that because why would they do that? Because
Right.
you're not for them, right?
Right.
So in hindsight, they start to look at, no, this was not a match. They were not meeting my standards,
Right.
right? So yeah, it can hurt. And honestly, like if you do this, if you're stuck on someone and you do the framework, it's a really good way to get over someone
Mhm.
because it puts things into perspective. Sometimes we are such extreme emotionals and we're, all about the attraction. If the values are not there and they're not meeting your standards, you need to love yourself and say no to that person,
Right.
even if they're the ones who said no first, right? You also need to say no. Okay, fair enough. That's not good enough for me,
Right.
right? Yeah.
That's a really great point. And I was actually thinking of that too, how you can use it to actually, rather than just using it to evaluate somebody that you're currently seeing or currently in a relationship with, it's a really good way to, as you said, move on from somebody because it gives you like a very clear perspective on, oh, this is why it did not work. Because as you mentioned, we can get so caught up in the emotions that we're feeling. And when we go through a breakup, we tend to like evangelize this person and only see the good qualities and tend to put a lot of the blame on ourselves a lot of times when we're having issues like moving on from the relationship. So I feel like this is a
Yeah.
really good way to put it in perspective of like, oh, okay, it was the dynamic between us. Like there is something else out there that's better for me, even if I did really love this person.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Like when you're broken up with, I feel like it's kind of very similar to the stages of grief. You're technically losing someone that you cared about, right? So then you start to bargain, right? And you start to negotiate. I think that's one of the stages, right? Then
Yeah.
there's acceptance, and then there's anger. That's all relevant here. I think in this case, it allows you to put things into perspective because you oscillate from like all these emotions, and I get it, right? We've all been there. I used to be an extreme emotional as well, right? Um, but I think once I put pen to paper and I realized, hey, this person that I thought I was madly in love with, were not showing up as a rock,
Hmm.
right? And also I identified traits that are not that healthy that I was attracted to, that
Right.
I'm like, Zoe, why? Why am I doing this? Right? So before my husband, I went through a breakup and it's actually in the epilogue of the book, right? So the journal entries are there where I was infatuated. I saw him as a 15%, but then I worked through that. I worked through my extreme emotional personality type style. I put things into perspective and I'm like, I was completely delusional. I gave him almost high marks for dependability and reliability. I'm like, how the F did I assume that, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's because your mind is just so, it wants to understand and it wants to get rid of the pain and it's bargaining and it's still in the stage of maybe I can get that person back, right? Maybe if whatever.
Hmm.
But then again, once you put it into perspective, it's not at all the case. So eventually I ended up rebalancing the scores because A, I worked on myself.
Hmm.
And I told myself, A, I'm being hard on myself for the score that I'm assigning to myself. I'm actually a good person, right?
Hmm.
B, I changed the trait preferences too. So
Hmm.
age used to be a trait preference of mine. I used to enjoy dating older. I also used to enjoy dating my culture,
Hmm.
right? Or like my cultural background. And then eventually I realized I'm like, well, what does it matter? I
Hmm.
grew up in Canada. I live in US.
Yeah.
Why do I need that? Also, why do I need older? So
Right.
when I met Kevin, who's younger than me and a white man at the dog park, I caught myself. I'm like, Zoe, don't do that thing that you always do. Just wait.
Hmm.
Right? So the values were a good match. The traits in the beginning, they were not totally aligned, but I allowed myself to let the attraction grow. And eventually I realized that he does like meet a lot of the traits that are attractive, right? I removed the age, I removed the culture, and then all of a sudden, we have a match. We
Right.
have a match, we get engaged, we get married. We're 2 years in now, right? So
Hmm.
it's like all to say you can change your patterns.
Hmm.
You can see where things are not aligned for yourself.
Hmm.
You can gain self-awareness and pass the self-awareness. You can heal your patterns and you can choose to make good decisions in love. You're not completely bound by emotions. We're humans. Of course, we're emotional, but we also have a brain and we also have free will to some extent, right? Um, so yeah, so that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I love your story with you and your husband because I think it's a really good example of like the slow burning flame rather than the quick fast flame, right? Because that slow burning flame, how you said that the attraction grew over time, I feel like that's something that a lot of us need to get used to. And I'm speaking from my experience too, where I always thought that, oh, if I don't feel this spark or this connection right away, then like why would I give it a chance or pursue it? Kind of like how you're saying, how you had the age and the cultural aspects in there. I think we all have that to a certain extent that we need to work through. So, having another example of that where it's like the slow burn can last so much longer, I think that's really inspiring for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm living proof of this, and I'm the same, by the or I used to be the same way, where it's like I needed that instant spark. And if you think about it, it's like a drug hit, right? It's like your
Yeah.
dopamine, your serotonin, your oxytocin, they're all like, like
Yeah.
swishing around in there in your brain. But the reality, though, is that it is like a drug, and that can be extremely draining. So if you find that you're at work, but your mind is elsewhere, that's probably not healthy,
Hmm.
right? It's okay to feel excited, it's okay to feel drawn, but if it gets to a point where it's like obsessive and
Yeah.
it completely dominates your thoughts and your mind, um, yeah, that's not healthy. And beyond it not being healthy, if you are doing that, you're sending energetic signals to that person and
Hmm.
you're overwhelming them with your energy. And
Hmm.
if you do that, once again, you're pinging their subconscious that you're going to be around. They can do whatever they want. They can go ahead and, like see what else is out there and there might be something better and whatever. So, all to say, when you keep that energy within yourself, you work on yourself, you keep your mind stable,
Hmm.
in the long run, it actually benefits you because if you truly want that specific person,
Hmm.
and you're not overwhelming them with signals and energy, they're more likely going to come to you. And
Yeah.
you're more likely going to end up in a secure dynamic.
Right, absolutely. And that kind of leads to what you were saying earlier, too, how, at least with your story, you started to work on yourself. And that's how you fixed your unhealthy patterns or your unhealthy traits to then now find this amazing husband, right? And I think that's something that can help if you're a person that struggles with being completely obsessed with somebody right when you meet them, when you don't really know them. Something that I found has helped me is reminding myself, like, one, I don't really know this person. Like, I know very little about this person. Like, let's wait and see once I get to know them a little bit more. Because there is the chance that as you get to know them more, you're not even gonna like them because there's that mismatch in values long term. But also
Exactly.
having a full life, like how you're saying, when you're living a full life authentic to yourself, you have other things to take up your energy and to take up your mind. So you're not sitting there obsessing and putting all your energy towards this one person.
Exactly. And that's attractive. It's
Mhm.
attractive, you know? And I'm not just talking about how girls can attract guys. Clearly, it goes both ways, right? Us women, we can be very desirable, right? Very magnetic, right? If a man is too much, like that can be a bit of a turnoff for us too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We want a rock, we want a man, but we don't necessarily want someone that we can step all over. We don't want a doormat, right? That's not sexy. We want, like a manly man, right? But a gentleman. And
Yes.
I think that's a very it's an interesting balance because I used to not add that in my top 5 values. And I realized I'm like, I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the old school within me. But I love it. I find it so attractive and so magnetic and so manly. So it's like a man who wants to be there for you and
Yes.
kind of protect you and be a gentleman.
Yes.
You know, like, and it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily put on a pedestal. It just means that they have good manners,
Yeah.
which is awesome. You know
Yes.
what I
Yes, absolutely. I so agree. And I've gone through this journey too, where like before when I was younger, I it would make me feel very uncomfortable for a man to take care of me, and that was because of my own stuff that I had to work through, right? But it made me very uncomfortable to for a man to take care of me in certain ways, and I was very hyper independent and did not want that. And obviously, that affected my relationships and the type of people that I was actually allowing to have access to me. And now I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum where I'm like, oh yeah, like, no, I really like having a man that I can depend on, that is stable, that, as you said, is a gentleman. It's
mean?
someone that can be my rock and is someone that just provides and like has that very protective energy about them. That to me now feels so safe and it is such a different experience than what I was experiencing before when I was younger.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And thanks for sharing about the hyper independence. Because I have been learning more about that, and from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, it tends to be a trauma response,
Yeah.
right? Of constantly like needing to fend for yourself, not being able to rely on other people,
Hmm.
and then it just manifests into hyper independence, right? But
Hmm.
I think that you kind of, I'm glad that you've healed through that, because that's another thing with men. They want to feel needed.
Yes.
They need to feel valuable. They need to feel like a man,
Mhm.
right? Depends on the generation, of course, right? I think the older generation will be more skewed towards that versus the younger, where gender roles are a bit more, I don't want to say balanced, but I think you know what I mean. So,
Yes. They're not
I'm
quite
not gonna.
black and white, right? There's room for flexibility there.
Yeah, I think let's talk about energies, right? Feminine and masculine energies. So not roles, energies. I think they're more defined and more clear cut with older generations than younger generations. That's from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, with the hyper independence, I totally hear that. So men want to know that, they can be valuable. They want to feel needed. At their primal instinct, their primal level, they're protectors,
Mhm.
right? So when they can tap into that, there's a very beautiful masculine energy that comes out, and it's very sexy if
Oh
you
yeah.
like, it really is. So by like kind of playing with that feminine energy, they get to kind of pump up and be their masculine, and then you just let them do their thing, and then there you
Right.
go.
Right, exactly. And you are so right. There is something very sexy about a man who is in his masculine like that. But
Yeah.
if you're a female listening, obviously you have to be allow him to do that. So obviously we know that you can open your own door as a minor example, but like maybe just allow him to do that for you. Allow him to step up and do those things for you so that he can
Yeah,
step into that role that you're craving him to do. But you have to allow yourself to let your walls down enough to actually let him step into that first.
yeah, exactly. I think communication is also very important with that, because I think our generations have been a little confused about what's appropriate and what's not. Like, I always use this as an example, like Destiny's Child. I think within one album, they had like independent woman, right? In one song where it's all about, I paid for my own stuff, blah, 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 right? And then literally in the same album, bills, 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 can you pay my bills?
Yeah.
It's just confusing.
Yeah.
I don't think men know what to do,
Yeah.
right? And all women will have their own standards in terms of what is appropriate to them, what they're feeling comfortable with. Like, I have a girlfriend who doesn't feel comfortable with the man paying for the bill,
Right.
right? And she's 100% has to be 50-50, and I respect that so much, right?
Right.
But a lot of women are not necessarily like that, right? A lot of women will say, pay for me forever. Other women will say just the first date, just to be, just to be a gentleman, whatever it may be, right? And I think men are very confused
Yeah.
about what they need to do. So I think it's also our responsibility to communicate to a man, right? Gently, right? And also
Mhm.
never with entitlement, right? But
Yeah.
just letting them know, here's my definition of a gentleman, and I would like a gentleman. And then see if they can fit that, right? And see if it
Yeah.
comes natural to them.
That I'm so glad that you brought that up because I'm single and I'm dating, and this is actually something that has been brought up to me before, and I'm very clear about what I'm looking for, like the type of man that I feel safe with, really on like the first date with people, just because my time is valuable, their time is valuable. Like, there's no point in like spending time with somebody if it's not going to be a match in that way. But I bring up the fact that, hey, I feel more comfortable with a man that's like a provider and protector. And to me, that means that I like when they pay the bill on the date, right? And so that's different than what your friend is saying, where she likes to pay 50-50. But I've had
Hmm.
so many men, whether it's my clients or whether it's me, like on dates, where they've told me, like, thank you for saying this to me because it is so confusing. Like, I can never tell if this is like a good thing to do or a bad thing to do because sometimes women get mad at me for doing this and sometimes they get mad
Yeah.
at me for not doing this. And so it's
Yeah.
really confusing for them to keep up with what you actually want and desire. But when you're communicative about that, they can either say, hey, like, yes, this is what I want to, or hey, maybe this isn't a good fit. And then you move on and it's just clear communication, saving heartbreak and anxiety for everybody involved.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you can't even blame them. Yeah, and there's no reason to blame the women for it either, right? Like we have our rights in terms of what makes us comfortable and what doesn't, right? Like I heard of a story where a woman got mad that the man opened the door for her.
Mhm.
To each their own, right?
Mhm.
To get mad, I think is a little extreme, but
Yeah.
like for me, that's something that's very natural.
Yeah.
But clearly for her, it felt like her strength and power was taken away,
Right.
right? To each their own. But I do feel for men, like it must be extremely confusing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
dealing with us, right? We're like a mixed bag. Like you don't know what you're gonna get.
Yes. Yes. It must be so confusing because as you're saying, like women want so many different things and none of it is bad, right? You're allowed to want what you want and to have the
Yeah.
dynamic in your relationships that you want to have. Like one of my best friends, she and her husband kind of almost have like swapped like traditional gender roles where she's the breadwinner and he does more of the cooking and the cleaning, and that works really well for them. But
Yeah.
when you're able to be honest about what you want and who you're looking for, then you're actually able to find that match rather than trying to force someone into being that match because you want them to be the person that you're with, but you also want them to be a very specific type of way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It just comes down to communication. In fact, the framework, so I used this framework with my husband 6 months in and then a year after our marriage. So, the reason we did it 6 months in was just because I wanted to see how it works with couples, right? And it was really good because we got to see what each other's standards are. But
Mhm.
also, he got to see where I feel insecure within my own standards because you have to grade yourself for each
Right.
one. And also, he realized that I admired him, and he didn't know that, right? I would jokingly call him my trophy and everything, but to
Yeah.
see it on paper and to see exactly like the things where it's like, Kevin, like I admire you so much and I'm so proud of you,
Right.
right? It made him feel great, right? So it was really positive for communication
Yeah.
and really helped us understand each other. So here's the thing, a year into our marriage, things were not super aligned with us.
Okay.
We were arguing and and we couldn't get to a place of alignment, right? So I really try not to bring in my framework in our relationship because I'm trying to not be our therapist, right?
Right.
But I did get to a point where I'm like, Kevin, like, come on, we can do this,
Yeah.
right? Like, so we both sat down and we did it, and it became very clear where I was falling short in his eyes, where he was falling short in my eyes, right? And what I loved is that we didn't play any blame game, right? We didn't say, well, you started it, no, you did, whatever. No, we just said, Kevin, here's where things are getting a little lazy. And he
Hmm.
said, Zoe, here's where you could be better, where you used to be and where you are today.
Right.
So we just worked on that. We worked on that, and it was a solid tool for communication. So going back to, the dates and like being confused about where you stand, I'm not saying pull out the book and do the framework on your, I'm not saying that, right? But what I am saying is that there are ways to have conversations to find out what their values are, and you can communicate your values, but make sure you define them too. So like another value, for example, is financial choices. That can mean anything. That can mean how much you earn.
Hmm.
That can mean how you spend your money, whether it's traveling or a mortgage or like it can mean anything, right? So you can have that as your top five value, but what does it mean for you? Like,
Right.
where are you at with that? What are your choices here? But also, what choices are you looking for in a man? Like, Kevin is the more pragmatic one. He's the safer one between the two of us. I'm a bit of a spender, right? I'm a
That's a
bit
good
more.
balance too, though.
He has a good solid 9 to 5. I'm an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
Um, so it balances out, right? So even though I have financial choices, it doesn't mean I want him to be like me because I have a risky type of, and he's the more stable one. All
Mhm.
to say, like, again, it's you can have your values. Communication is so important, right? Just to understand where you guys meet each other and what each other's standards are, right? Especially if you're looking at the person in the long run. It would be so positive to do this in like, I'm not saying first date or even first few dates, but eventually once things start to get serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you have a better understanding of what their values actually are, right? Because you can never have a true understanding of what someone's values are based on the first date or who they are as a person, but based on the first date, because everybody's one, people are probably nervous on a first date, and two, like people are able to show up really well for a first date, and then some of those other things start to come out later. So I think it's really good advice to use it a little bit later. But I also love that you used it as a tool for your marriage. And it's such a good point because I feel like sometimes when we do get married, we think like, okay, like we did it, we made it. And people do start to get a little bit more comfortable, right? And they forget about all those things that are important to their partner and even important to themselves. So I love that you used that as a tool for you and your husband.
Yeah. It was definitely necessary well, not necessary, but I would say that it helped us a lot. It helped us a lot with like communication, right?
Mm.
But actually, I totally agree with you that people are really good at wearing masks and performing. So what you're gonna see in month number 3 or month number 4 might be different to month number 1,
Right.
right? And in fact, sometimes it's year 1 will be different to year 4. You know what I mean? But there is a little trick that I use if I
Okay.
want to understand the person's values. Ask them what their definition of sophisticated is.
Oh,
How do you define sophisticated? If they say something to the effect of uh, career education, that's going to be a value, right? People who can have smart conversations, that'll be education. Of course, education doesn't just mean a bachelor's or a master's or whatever. It can mean listening to podcasts, learning about world events and everything, right?
mhm.
So if they say something like traveling a lot, money will likely be a value there because you need money to travel,
Right.
right? But culture might also be a value as well. So just find out, like ask them, how do you define sophisticated? What about your weeks? What is sophisticated in a week, right? If
Right.
they talk about family, right? And like doing things with family, you'll know that family is one of their values, right? If they talk about sports, right, and being a part of a league, you'll know that health consciousness is a
Mhm.
part of it. If they're very mindful about what they eat, again, health consciousness, right? So there are ways that you can go past the performance,
Right.
right? Hopefully they're not going to perform with their answers. Hopefully they'll be authentic there.
Yeah.
But yeah, but women have such a strong like intuitive sense. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you'll know. I think you'll know if she's
Yeah.
full.
Oh yeah, I love that hack. That is such a, I've never thought of that question myself, but it's such a great
Yeah.
question. And now it's one that I feel like I want to ask. And
You have to. You're single and you're dating, girl.
I know,
You throw
I'm
that question out there.
like, where can I try this next?
Exactly. And let me know. Let me know.
Oh, I will for sure. But that's such a great point too with that just finding out those different values with those little questions and to the point that as women, we are very intuitive, right? It's just a matter of listening to the intuition that we're feeling rather than trying to think it away or explain it away and convince ourselves otherwise. Like those little gut feeling hits, I think are so important for to listen to in dating and in other relationships too, in other situations.
Yeah. I think that the pain overrides the gut feeling sometimes. Because again,
Mhm.
when we go through a breakup, it can very much feel like grief. And you go through the stages of grief, right? Your intuition is probably pinging at you like, hey, this wasn't good. Like, hey, this was draining to you. You're not your best self here. You're
Mhm.
not glowing. You're always sad. You're
Mhm.
always overthinking. God does not want that for you. Your angels don't want this for you. Your angels want you to live life with love, whether that's self-love or love towards other people,
Mhm.
but balance the love, not over giving, not over forgiving, right? So, yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Great. So I do have a question. So I know that we're talking more in the romantic sense for this, and that was kind of the focus of your book to begin with
Mhm.
from the start. But I am curious if you can use this with other relationships too. So whether it's with your parents or with some of your friends, or even in a professional setting with your coworkers or with your boss, is this something that can be like modified to kind of evaluate those relationships too, or should it really mostly be used for like a romantic sense?
That's such a great question. The surveys and the analytics were done specifically for romantic relationships, but I started looking into the theory and expanding it in terms of how it would work for friendships. Here's my take. I think that male friendships are less complex than female friendships,
Yeah.
right? So I think that I would need two different type of research studies for that.
Okay.
What I am finding is that for female friendships, traits are very important, right? Because you have values and traits, right?
Hmm.
Traits are so important because that's what chemistry is,
Hmm.
right? Values can also be important. Mind you, if there are distortions that show up within female friendships, whether it's like the competitor, right? Someone who's constantly looking to compete, right?
Hmm.
Or there's another one that I identified, which is the princess. So
Hmm.
you wouldn't think that's a thing, but I've personally come across it, right? Where it's like your female friend feels like they're a princess.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to, you know what I mean, treat them as such. And that can really get in the way of
Right.
a healthy dynamic,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
There's another one that I identified, which is the know-it-all, right? The person who feels like they are entitled to all areas of your life, right? Information about your life, and then they love to tell you what to do and
Hmm.
what you shouldn't do, right? And I think it's because women's women love so much
Hmm.
and we want to be there for each other. So the energies and the lives get very much entangled. But the moment they get entangled, I think that the quirks start coming out more.
Hmm.
When the quirks start coming out, like the ones that I just mentioned, I think that that can make for rocky, unstable friendships, right? And because women tend to be more sensitive too, right? When a quirk does come out, we are hyper, like we see it. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. You're more likely to be annoyed. Communication can be tough because we tend to be more personable, agreeable. So we tend to not enjoy confrontation that much, right?
Hmm.
So, all to say, this framework for couples seems to work. It seems to be pretty cut and dry. Here's the analytics behind it. I think for friendships, it would need to be two types of research studies, men and women. And I think that there's just more complexity with
Yeah.
that, especially on the women's side, on the female side. With I do believe, though, that this could work very easily for businesses and their clients.
Okay.
So I own a business and I'm very mindful of my clients. So the moment in the first call, I get a sense of entitlement, of know-it-all attitude that they can do better, I'm like, then you don't need me. I
Right.
need peace of mind. I need to give my team peace of mind. You need peace of mind. If you can already tell that you're not going to have peace of mind with me, we're not moving forward.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I can absolutely, I feel like I do apply this stuff.
Okay.
And I can tell you that with business owners who bring in their team, usually they want those people to hit their core values,
Right.
right? So yeah, I do feel it's applicable, but in terms of a very specific framework, I haven't done it, but it's absolutely in the back of my mind to eventually do it because I do think it's applicable.
Okay. Honestly, I cannot, I appreciate your honesty in that and all of you obviously have put a lot of thought and a lot of work into this already, but I
Mhm.
personally can't wait for you to do a second based on what we were just talking about, not to like put that out there, but I would love for you to do that. Not just
Yeah.
on the romantic side, but on the friendship and the business side, like we were just discussing.
Yeah, I literally have an outline. I have an outline for the friendship side, and I started building out the skeleton.
Amazing.
And yeah, so it's like honestly, it's kind of a time thing too.
Yeah.
Like dude, it took me 6 years to finish. I've been thinking about it for 20 years. Took me 6 years to finish it. I literally just finished it 8 months ago, and I'm t telling myself like Zoe, slow down. Like just, like
Well, for everybody who's listening, that means it is very solid and you can definitely lean on it because there has been a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of thought that's been put into it.
thank you for saying that. It's true. It's true.
I do have one more question. So going back to your book, let's say I'm somebody who wants to use this to either get over a breakup or to evaluate my relationships going forward or how the compatibility is between me and my partner, and I get your book. Can you walk me through kind of a simple what the process looks like, what I'll be going through in your book to kind of to do that, to use this framework?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, first, I explain the evolutionary psychology behind why we look for a match or someone who's above us, right? So I go into Darwinism. I explain some social psychologist perspectives too, right? So it's not super long, but it's just to give you that basis for the science behind it, right? And the psychology behind it.
Mhm.
Next, we go into how to actually do it. And then I give you three examples.
Okay.
First example is two people who just met at the coffee shop. The second example is two people who swipe right on each other. The third one, which in my opinion is one of the deeper ones, it's a couple who's been together for 10 years who outgrew each other. So the woman outgrew the man, whereas the man was still very much in love.
Mhm.
So we look at the two stages of the formula, right? How it used to be a match, and now it's sadly no longer a match for one of the people, and she leaves. Next, we go into relationship zones. What that means is what happens when two people with low self scores match. That's a red zone. What happens when you have one low score, one high score? That's yellow zone. Also infatuation, also self-sacrificing, the whole shebang that we talked about. And then we have two high scores, which is the green zone.
Okay.
That's the secure relationship, and that's where you want to be. And if you're either in red or yellow, you can absolutely make it to the green.
Okay.
Next, we go into the personality types. So, if you're an extreme emotional, you're going to find out here. If you're dating an extreme practical, you're going to find out. If you're a safety seeker, someone who's looking for a score lower than you,
Mhm.
not necessarily bad, but you probably will not be fulfilled. If you're an extreme safety seeker, you're looking for someone who's way lower than you're likely sitting in trauma and letting your trauma take over because that's not human. It's not our primal instinct to be with someone who's less than us. So next we go into distortions. So infatuation is one of them, self-sacrificing is another, and the final section is how to use the framework to build on your self-score and also how to communicate with your partner and work together to come to a place of alignment.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, sorry, it's a lot.
No, I think it's perfect. And I think the way that it's laid out makes it very valuable and very easy to understand. A way to understand yourself better, your partner better, and just improve upon how you're showing up. So thank you so
Thank you, Carl.
much. For
Thank you.
everybody who's listening, how can they get in contact with you and where can they get the book?
Sure. So you can find me. My website is lovecaninfactbecalculated.com. My Instagram and TikTok handles are at Zoey Charif, Zoey, Charif, Charif for Fred. And you can find the book in Barnes and Noble or um, Amazon.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. So I will include links to all the places you can connect with Zoe. I'll include links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I don't know if you can order actually off of Barnes and Noble online.
Yeah, you can order
Okay.
it online. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because I've always just gone to Barnes and Noble in person, but I'll
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So it's actually only in a few stores, but online, you can order it online.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Zoe. Is there any last piece of advice that you would like to leave listeners with before we sign off?
Yeah, just one thing. At the end of the day, it comes down to your self-score.
Okay.
If you have a low self-score, the analytics are showing that you're not likely going to maintain a stable relationship. You need to work on yourself. Once you have a good self-score, I assure you that you will be magnetic. Maybe you won't be magnetic to that specific person, maybe you will, right? But
Mhm.
if you work on that, believe me, you will attract a man who wants to be your rock. And yeah, and you guys can be that for each other. So it all comes down to a self score. Work on yourself, the rest of the pieces will fall into place.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much, Zoe. And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, then go ahead and subscribe so you get updates with us every week. You can also follow us on Instagram at KRC Coaching. If you're interested in working one-on-one, then go ahead and visit our website, krccoaching.com, to book your first 30-minute session for free. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Love you. Bye.